There are a lot of parts to your brain. This is not an anatomy course. This is even a neuropsychology course. So if the brain and its biology interests you, fantastic. There are plenty of ways that you can learn all about that. For this course, however, I've tried to pick some of the most important structures that would be good for you to know coming away from a general psychology course. So we are literally just scratching the surface of the brain here. But some of these terms are big and scary and overwhelming. So for our intents and purposes, I want you to be familiar with the four parts of the outer part of the brain, the cerebrum, and then the four parts of the middle, the interior brain, the limbic system. So let's start with the limbic system because that's where humans start. The limbic system is the first part of your brain to develop, which makes sense because everything it does is really primitive and it's not very evolved in terms of thinking. So when your limbic system is doing something, it's very kind of a basic human thing. So in terms of your limbic system, the first thing we'll start with is the boring one, the thalamus. The thalamus is just kind of like the switchboard operator. It just relays sensory information from all of your parts of your body to different parts of your brain that need it. So it's kind of like an assistant, a secretary, a triage. It just makes sure sensory information goes where it needs to. Your hypothalamus, however, is the part of your brain that's responsible for all of your human kind of instinctual drives. So these are things that you don't choose to do, that if you don't get to do them, it makes you very cranky. And eventually your body will revolt if you don't do them. So your hypothalamus motivates your drive for thirst, for hunger, for sleep, for sexual activity, all those things that human beings just do. That's why when you are starving, you will do things that maybe you wouldn't do otherwise, because your brain is this instinctual drive that says, I am human, I need food. So that's why our hypothalamus is not a higher part of our brain. It's very primitive, it's very primal. Then we have the hippocampus. The hippocampus we have found is responsible in part for the formation of long-term memories. And I always tell people if you were to see a hippo on a campus, that would be a memory that would stick with you for a long time. So there you go, hippocampus, long-term memory. If it helps you, that's fine. Don't judge me. I know it's cheesy, but it works. I still have students who are like, 10 years ago, you told me about the hippocampus. So take that for what it's worth. Finally, the limbic system, we have the amygdala, which is responsible for fear responses. Again, fear is primal. We don't choose to be afraid of stuff. We just are. So students will say Princess Amidala from Star Wars was very afraid. That's how they remember that. I had a girl in graduate school named Amy. It was terrifying. So that's how I remember that amygdala is responsible for fear. Whatever works for you. But those are just four of the parts of the limbic system. And again, that's the middle. That's the interior of your brain. It's the first part that develops, and it's not very intelligent, for lack of a better word. The outer part of your brain is the cerebrum, and there are four different types of cerebral lobes that I want you to be familiar with. The first is your occipital lobe. This is responsible for processing visual information. The occipital lobe is located in the back of your brain, which kind of makes sense if you just think about information going in through your eyes and to the back of your brain. Occipital also has two C's in it, and that's what it helps you do. See, crazy. Then you have your temporal lobes, which are located on either side of your brain, and that's located directly above your ears, which should clue you into what they help you do. Your temporal lobes are responsible for helping you interpret auditory information, stuff here, and meaningful speech. So that is your temporal lobes. Then we have your parietal lobes, or your parietal lobes, if you prefer to pronounce it that way. But that's responsible mostly for your tactile sensations. So touch, temperature, body position, all of that is regulated by your parietal lobes. And then finally, the front of your brain are your frontal lobes. Front of your brain. And that, my mouse just dropped. That is responsible for higher intellectual functioning. So this is when you think about problem solving, decision making, things that require some actual thought, as opposed to that primitive inner limbic system, which requires no thought whatsoever. But your frontal lobe is actually the last part of your brain to develop. And for most people, it doesn't fully develop until your early 20s. So that's why adults can look back when they were like 18 and 19 and go, holy crap, I can't believe that I did those things. I was afraid of roller coasters for a while, but then when I got like 16, 17. I was all about them. Such a rush, such a thrill. Many decades later, the thought of those terrifies me because when I'm on it, I'm thinking this is so much fun that I could die at any second. That's because my frontal lobe is thinking about the future, my judgments, my decision making, all of those potential things. Whereas 16-year-old Wesley didn't really care. Frontal lobe was still a work in progress. So your outer cerebrum is composed of your frontal lobe, your parietal lobes, your parietal lobes, your temporal lobes, and then your occipital lobes. So again, that's only 2 different sections, 4 parts each, 8 total parts of the brain in this module. But just know there are a lot more, and if we had more time, we would get into them, but we don't. So bye.